we come to find that despite unemployment going down, despite inflation going down, despite GDP going up, Americans are more unhappy than any time before. This year in the Global Happiness Rating Survey, the United States, for the first time since they started doing this survey, fell out of the top 20. We are now number 23 in the world. Even more worrying, amongst young people, the United States ranks 62nd in the world. And this is reflected by other surveys that show over the last 10 years, the rate of happiness and contentment and fulfillment, self-reported by Americans, dropping, despite the fact that the economy is growing and more people have jobs and crime is plummeting. And so I'm on the floor for just a few minutes to ask this simple question. Should we care about this disconnect between the quality of life indicators that we normally look to assess the measure of our public policy and self-reported rates of happiness? And my answer is pretty simple. We should care because we are in the business of happiness. I know that doesn't sound right because your happiness comes from your personal decisions, the priorities that guide your day. Our government isn't in the business of delivering the last mile of happiness, but we absolutely are in the business of delivering the first mile of happiness. Why do we know that? Because that charge, that mission is in our founding document. The Declaration of Independence says that amongst the inalienable rights enjoyed by all human beings includes the right to pursue happiness. And so that means that our job, charged to us by our founders, is to set up rules of the economy, rules of society, rules of culture that give people the best shot at achieving happiness. And so it's time that we take a big step back as policymakers and ask, if a job or rising GDP or a safe neighborhood isn't bringing people happiness, what does? And all I'm suggesting today is that we engage in a conversation together, an apolitical, nonpartisan conversation to try to discover the roots of American unhappiness. Because it doesn't appear that just dialing the knobs of public policy to the right, as happened under Trump's presidency, or to the left under Biden's presidency, is changing this long-term dynamic of more Americans reporting being unsatisfied with their life. Let me just tease this conversation with two routes to happiness that we don't talk enough about. The first is connection. In fact, if you look at longitudinal surveys of Americans' happiness, there's a seminal study done by Harvard where they study over the course of 75 years Americans of every income bracket, of every race, and ask them questions every year. Are you happy? And if so, why are you happy? What they found, and what many other surveys find, is that it's actually not a job or a career or how much money you make, but your relationships, your connection to other human beings, that actually is most indicative, most predictive of whether you will report being happy and fulfilled in your life. And so it shouldn't be surprising or shocking to us that during a moment where more Americans are reporting feeling deeply lonely, we are also seeing more people reporting being unhappy. There has been a sea change in this country over the last 20 years when it comes to the amount of time that we spend with other human beings. And the data is particularly acute for young people, but it is true of adults as well. We spend nearly half as much time today with other human beings in personal connection than we did just 30 years ago. That is a catastrophic decline in socialization. There are lots of reasons for that, but many of them are connected to public policy choices that we have made.